What's up, Moreno Valley Youth? Today we're going to be talking about what it means to be holy. So what does the word holy mean? The word holy used in the Old Testament is a Hebrew word, and it's kodesh. And what it means is to be set apart or in a class of its own. When referring to God and man, there's a slight difference. When referring to God, it means, like I said, in a class of its own, completely set apart as God is perfect. But we're called to be holy just as God is holy. So we're called to be set apart and different from the world too. Leviticus 19:2 says, "Speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." Now, Israel, the nation that God chose, the nation that we read about in the Old Testament, was called to be this example that when the nations around Israel looked in and they saw Israel, they saw a nation that followed God. The punishments that we see Israel receive in the Old Testament always come about because Israel conformed to the world around them. They would give in to things like idolatry, sexual immorality, lying, cheating, stealing, not at all the way of life that God was calling them to have. And that was when things like captivity would happen and when Israel was punished by God. But I want you guys to know is that just like Israel was called to be God's chosen people, we are God's chosen people today. The church, the body, we're called to be holy and set apart from the world. Romans 12:1-2 says this. It says, "I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by the testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." We're not to be conformed to the patterns of this world. We're to be transformed. What it says here at the end, it says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." What I want you guys to know is that when we live this holy life that is set apart from the world, we are not always going to be received well. You're going to have people tugging at you and pulling you to give in to the world and to be conformed. We are called as Christ has gone through so much suffering for us that we should be willing to accept that we're not going to give in to the world. We're going to be different. And sometimes people aren't going to like that. And, they're going to think you're weird. They're going to think you're different. And really, the question is, are you willing to accept that? Are you willing to accept the fact that being a follower of Christ, sometimes you're not going to be received well by the world? But that's not what we're called to be. We're called to be more than that. The verse that I want to leave you guys with, as we're talking about being holy and being set apart from the world, is 1 Peter 2, verse 9. And it says this, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light." Guys, remember that we are that holy nation, and we're going to proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. See you later, guys.